if the board is mostly dovish and the voting members, are we done? Well, why are yields going back up if we're not done?
Get ready for a new episode of KP Talks Dollars and Cents. Learn financial literacy and get real-time updates on all things housing, finance, and real estate. So let's get started. Here's your host, Kevin Perenio.
Hey, it's KP coming to you live from Corona, California. No close-up shots of me in the car this time, and I appreciate all the engagement on the last post. We are back at the desk. I've got one trip tomorrow to the Lenders One. It's an executive roundtable, and that is in La Jolla. And then I have the California Mortgage Banker Association board meeting up in, I believe it's in Northern California, the first week of December, and then I'm done traveling for the road. So what's going on? Potential government shutdown, NAR lawsuit for $1.78 billion, could have treble damages up to $5 billion. I'll talk about that in a second. Jobs report came out. The Bureau of Labor Statistics came out on Friday. Pretty soft jobs report. Had a nice bond rally. 10-year Treasury went all the way down to 4.488 on Friday. I mean, it's like a 50 basis point swing, but then we had a little correction today, Monday, although we're almost to Tuesday here on the West Coast. So let's talk about the NAR thing for a second, because we have a lot of realtors and originators on here and sales leaders. Like, what is the message right now? I haven't heard too many concrete things out there of what exactly you're going to say, because it's still a little unclear. It's been just under a week since the rulings came out. So just to make sure everyone understands what's going on, there was a collusion lawsuit filed, I believe, in the state of Missouri, where if you have to list your home for sale in the multiple listing service, which the MLS has been pretty much run by the National Association of Realtors for decades, it was basically mandated what you would put in there by the selling agent, what would be paid as commission for the seller's agent and also the buyer's agent. So it was very interesting. I've seen a lot of takes on this, and the reality is it's going to get appealed by NAR. Okay, so consumers didn't get a choice, right, in this state. And there's like a $40 billion lawsuit about to come up in the state of Illinois, and then there are some copycat suits in some other states that are being filed now. So we just got to keep an eye on it. There's a lot of conjecture. There will be some changes because of this. It could be as simple as, just kind of finding out what a buyer's agent is going to get paid up front in the agreement between the consumer and the buyer's agent. And then at the time of offer on a house, that buyer's agent would then negotiate with the seller's agent at that time, as opposed to just being mandated in the listing. Because remember, those multiple listing, that data gets put out in many different websites. There's going to be multiple lawsuits, multiple entities. Some people may just want to say, hey, I want to get out in front of this and I'm going to change my policies now. Would I just, mention a way of kind of negotiating those contracts and those fees, I think is probably your path of least resistance. But at the end of the day, I'll make a couple analogies, right? So a buyer's agent has value, like good ones have value. They help do things. It's not as simple as go to my website and just pick a house, like you order a piece of shampoo, a bottle of shampoo or shoes or whatever online. I think at least for the first-time home buyer, there's a lot that a buyer's agent can provide in knowledge. And so the ones that know their worth and the ones that are good and the ones that help people get under contract right now, which is very hard to do because there's, such a limited supply in so many different markets, I think they'll continue to thrive no matter what. I mean, are for sale by owners just thriving because every single seller I don't need a listing agent. I can do this on my own. I'm a great negotiator because I read, The Art of the Deal or some book, like that. I don't know. So, listing agents and buyer's agents, they provide value, especially good ones, with experience in all of their surveys and all of their past experiences, online to show, how good they are. So I think they'll figure out a way But I've seen people doomsday it say, hey, buyers don't want to pay any fees. They're just going to find a way not to pay them. And, I don't know. But it's still unclear. The treble damages and the judge in the case will make a determination here imminently, maybe tomorrow within the next couple of days. And then they'll, talk about, how, if they're going to make a change to how, buyer's agents are paid. And of course, there'll be an appeal process, and that could take, a year or two. So everyone's watching. This is what we're all talking about right now. There isn't actionable things to do at this exact moment, except, hey, if you're working with a buyer's agent as an originator, or you are one, make sure maybe you negotiate, your fees and your agreement with that consumer up front, and then start working with the listing agent, when you make an offer. And a lot of buyer's agents and listing agents have worked together in the past, and they can help each other out. I know there's a lot of agents that double-side deals right now. Listing agents have a lot of power in a limited supply market, and that limited supply market is not going away. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on that. All right, jobs report. It was, first of all, it wasn't just the jobs report that made the bond market rally, improving interest rates, and also the stock market rally. And I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not responsible for your losses, only your profits, but the market did rally. There's some technical things going on with these markets. I'm not saying that we're off to the races. I'm just saying when you see data like this come out, a Fed open market meeting that's somewhat dovish, a second pause in a row, where the market, according to the CME Fed futures tool, is assuming that they're done and less likely to have that 25 basis point rate hike. On December 13th, the next Fed meeting, will know, because then they have to put their dot plot out and say, where they think the terminal rate will be. And so will they keep us guessing into 2024? I doubt it. But we'll see. But the point is, you had the Fed meeting, they paused, it didn't raise rates. And then you had services data, the ISM services data, which actually came down a little bit. Remember, a lot of inflation has been coming from services, now non-housing services. So that data got a little softer. And then the manufacturing ISM data is, again, I think it was like the 12th month in a row of recessionary index. It means the index below 50, I think it was like 48.7, something like that. So manufacturing has been in a recession. Housing has been in a recession. That's two rolling recessions, whereas maybe other things like services have not been in a recession. But what's interesting is, everyone's on recession watch, and we think we could be in it or not be in it. Although we had that really high GDP number, which, was mostly consumer spending, that 4.9%, 2.7% of it was spending, 4.3 or 4.9, I can't remember. But basically, you can have a waterfall dive of GDP, maybe not in Q4, but certainly slow down and then go negative Q1 or Q2. The velocity of money is slowing down. The supply of money is negative this year. And so we had a brief little boost in money supply when the banking crisis happened in March. But money supply has been coming down, and the velocity of money is how economies grow. Commodity prices have been coming down. Look at oil, it's been coming down. A lot of food commodity prices have been coming down. If we're in this big growthy economy because of what the GDP said, why isn't copper? Why aren't the price of commodities going up? Why are services coming down? Why is manufacturing still down? Why is housing in a full-blown recession? And so, if we're in recession, that is mortgage rate friendly, and we saw how quick it can turn on a dime in just those 2 trading days last week with all that data that came out. The jobs report, 150,000 jobs, plus revisions down on the last 2 reports, like a net 100,000 jobs lost in the last 2 reports. That's not good. Unemployment rate going up to 3.83 or 3.88, 3.9% from, a low of 3.4. That's a 0.5% increase, and so, if labor is softening, wage growth, remember the wage price spiral we talked about outside, wage inflation, that was down to 4.1% year over year, down from 4.3 in the last report just a month ago. And labor productivity is up, of course, because people are losing jobs. So the people left when the jobs are cut, they're really productive because they don't want to lose their jobs either. And so is the market softening? it's going to be tough for housing for the next couple months. There are signs of things turning for us next year. I could talk about so much more for like a lot more time, but I got to roll. Have a great night. Cheers. Hey, it's KP coming to you live from Corona, California. And to quote Jerome Powell today, just close the fucking door. Close the door. He actually said that. I'll get into that in a little bit. But before we go into all the news and everything that's going on with the Fed and housing and inflation and all that, we need to honor and salute all the valor of our veterans. This weekend is Veterans Day, and it always falls on November 11th. You know how when the clock's 11:11, you're supposed to make a wish twice a day? Well, this is the biggest wish of all. We wish our veterans the best. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of the year, the Allied forces signed our armistice with Germany, and that was the end of World War II. So that's why that date is always November 11th, and of course, it's a Saturday, so many companies will be observing that tomorrow. So we salute our veterans. Thank you so much. It's an honor that you've done what you've done. All right, so the Fed spoke today. Why is that a big deal? What's been going on with bonds? Remember last week he spoke at the Federal Open Market Committee meeting, in his second meeting in a row where there was a pause. So everyone was thinking, hey, man, they're done. They might not raise again, even though we didn't see the dot plot yet. So we're going to find out on December 13th what they say. But I found it interesting. You know, rates came down. There's about 25 to 30 basis point move on the 10-year Treasury on the yield, which directly impacts. It's not a one-to-one correlation, but it's pretty close. It's the closest one of them, the 10-year Treasury, because most loans, mortgage loans, even though they're a 30-year fixed mortgage, usually only last about 7.5, 8.5 to 10 years. Who knows with this reset of all these, 80% of all mortgages are under 5%. With all the cheap money that was out there, maybe they'll last a little longer. So there's a lot of people making bets out there buying servicing that they'll get that yield to last quite a bit longer. But anyway, so let's take a little step back before I get too deep into last week's data. Remember, when President Biden and the administration took power in the executive branch, they wanted to replace Jerome Powell with Lael Brainerd, and she is seen as dovish. And the reason why, like all political parties, they want to try and influence, all parts of our economy, and of course the Fed. And so it didn't work out because he didn't feel like they could get a consensus, and so they stacked the board with dovish members of the Fed board. One of them being the head economic advisor for the Obama administration, Austin Goolsbee. He was out today saying, hey, we need to be really cautious about the rates where they're at. We think there's enough medicine in the system. In essence, basically saying we shouldn't do any more, rate hiking. Whereas Fed Chair Jerome Powell was out speaking today, and some climate awareness protesters or whatever they were came out and interrupted him while he's speaking. And man, I had a little respect for him, not because of who is I love the fact that there are people voicing their opinion in America about climate change, and we can all have our opinions, and I don't really care, and it doesn't matter, you're not going to change yours, I don't really care to get into all that. But I thought it was pretty cool that Jerome Powell, when all these protesters came in and surrounded him, talk about a security breach. It's a Fed chair, and you got these random ass people coming up there, and he's like, close the effing door, close the door, just close the door. It was actually kind of funny to hear that candid moment on the hot mic. You can look it up, it's on Twitter. Thank you, Chase Cole, over there at United American, you big commercial stud, for sending me the Twitter links. Okay, so if the board is mostly dovish and the voting members, are we done? Well, why are yields going back up if we're not done? Well, a couple reasons. So there's something like $112 billion in new treasuries issued this week. We had a 3-year note auction of $48 billion, and then $40 billion of 10-year treasury notes, and then another $24 billion, if I got those numbers exactly right, of 30-year treasury long bonds. There's a difference between bills, notes, and bonds. The bills are typically 2 years and under, and then the notes are 3s all the way up to 10s, and then the long bonds are 20s and 30 bonds. There's actually technically a difference. That's a lot of issuing of new treasuries to be sold on the open market. And, the 30-year long bond auction today, which is although it was only like 24 billion, it was kind of graded a D. I looked in MBS Highway. I got to see the market wrap today, and the auction didn't go so well. But why would someone pay 5% for money to be locked up for 30 years? You could pay for 2-year notes and get the same yield, right? So it's very interesting. We'll watch this kind of dynamic continue to unfold as we go into next year. But remember, after the Fed spoke last week, and also at the beginning of the week, Treasury Secretary Yellen announced there'd be less new treasuries being issued in the next quarter and, this next round, the next 3 months. The market liked that. But then, you had to come pay the piper with Treasury auctions this week. So, yields kind of inch back up. So we're kind of in this range right now. It's very interesting from a technical standpoint to see the 25 moving day average of the 30-year Treasury yield kind of come down and hit the 50-day. Will it cross through? Not to get too technical, but it'll be very interesting to watch how things pan out because next Tuesday we have a CPI report. Remember, this is a fight of inflation, or at least it has been, right? So I'm going to get into what was the dual mandate, which is really a 3 mandate, which no one ever talks about. I'm going to talk about in just a second. But we're going to watch that, how it unfolds. But, we could be in this little trading range here for some time to come. But inflation is coming down. And housing is a huge inflation component of the CPI. It's a little less of a percentage component of the PCE, which is the personal consumption expenditure. So we all know that if rates come down, which everyone thinks they will next year at some point, that there'll be more demand for mortgages with less supply and housing prices will run back up again. So will the CPI go back up again? That is the crux of kind of the inflation fight, why Jerome Powell keeps saying higher for longer, because they have to keep rates higher for longer so we don't let the inflation genie back out of the bottle. And if housing is such a big component of it, and it, housing prices run again. I mean, they just went up 4.6%, according to some data. I saw Selma Hap over there, CoreLogic, post some data. 5.6% I saw from FHFA for August. So, depending on what report you look at, it's still higher than, inflation trend. And of course, it's a big look back 12-month component of inflation. So, will consumer demand that's being crushed by higher interest rates, will that demand come down enough and be low enough to offset these higher home prices, such a big part of the CPI right now? Time will tell. That's why we're data dependent, okay? So big inflation report coming out next week. Now, so going into next year and talking about this tri mandate, right? So I want to remind everyone, it's not just price stability and price stability, maximum employment. They've been able to ignore employment because inflation's been so high. But now that we had this soft jobs report last week, and we saw 8 of the last 9 BLS jobs reports had revisions down the next month. Jobs are getting softer, and continuing claims came out today. The ongoing continuing claims are at 1.83 and 1.84 million. It means it's harder once you lose a job to find a job. It sucks right now. It's a tough market in manufacturing, certainly in housing, in many different areas. And so the other third mandate, right? So now the inflation's coming down and employment's starting to get a little high. That dovish board may not like going into an election year that's stacked against a party that's trying to retain power. They may want to cut sooner rather than later and get cheaper money in the system to maybe help out people and employers, hire again. Small business is the engine for hiring, small business. And small business with higher debt at higher rates and having to pay for that debt is a problem. And that's what's choking off small business. Thank God here at PRMG and many of our peers, we have no debt. We owe nothing to anybody. And we have cash, and we don't know how long we need to hang on to it because of this recession that we're in. That third mandate is moderate long-term interest rates. The 30-year Treasury in just 4 months has gone from 3.84 to 5.1 yield. The 30-year long bond has gone up that much. That is a volatile market, and so there's still some fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the markets. So keep an eye on all that. Remember the 7 Ds, all these life events that continue I know I've said it a million times, but this is why people keep buying houses no matter what the rates are. The first one is deployment, because we put our veterans first. Then we got diamonds, diapers, debt, divorce, sometimes debt after that, downsizing, and death. Have a great weekend. Cheers.
You've been listening to KP Talks Dollars and Cents, a top-rated show for those who want to learn about the economy and mortgage environment. Tune in each week for more episodes, and please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Kevin Perenio does not render or offer to render personalized investment or tax advice through KP Talks Dollars and Cents. The information provided is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, tax, investment, or legal advice. For more info, follow KP Talks Dollars and Cents on all of our social channels.